shut up and sit down, you big bald f***.
Please subscribe.
Welcome everyone to Standing for Truth. My name is Donnie Badinsky, and tonight we're diving headfirst into a special live program where we put the evidence and the critics to the test. And in this video clip, we showcased some of the most powerful scientific evidence for young Earth creation.
Wait, some what for young Earth creation?
Some of the most powerful scientific evidence for young Earth creation.
Well, I feel a little bit foolish now. I was actually worried about how I was going to be able to respond to this video, although the fact that it took 3 of you to respond to me tells me a lot. It's like the setup to a bad joke. How many young Earth creationists does it take to respond to? Okay, well, maybe not a joke, but you know what I mean. Lads, I can debunk your pseudo-scientific claptrap blindfolded with one leg tied behind my back, so do your worst, which I'm sure you will have.
Tonight, we have Ben Kissling and Sam, and we are going to carefully and scientifically respond to Creaky Blinders video point by point. And the question is this. I want you guys to ask yourselves this question. Has this so-called guardian of common descent really debunked the evidence for young Earth creation?
Bit of a mouthful, but I think they mean me. And honestly, I don't care about childish wrestling nicknames. I care about the evidence. Oof. Now, unlike Curly, Moe and Larry, when I hear the words evidence for young Earth creation, I don't reach for my Bible. I look up scientific papers. Anyway, they've got these 5 claims, the whole geological hit list, if you will. And if they were as rock solid as these 3 claim, then we'd have to rewrite literally everything we know about science. So the real question isn't whether I've debunked their nonsense or not. It's has the evidence they are using survived the actual scrutiny of published, reputable science?
Or will the data once again confirm the truth of God's word?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say no, it doesn't, because it never does.
And before we go point by point thoroughly through his video, we are going to just play about 30 seconds of it where he makes an assertion that there is no evidence for young Earth creation.
That's fine. You can call it an assertion if it makes you feel better, but an assertion in a scientific argument is acceptable when it's supported by sufficient empirical evidence. And we've got loads. Young Earth creationists, not so much.
And then Ben Kissling has a presentation, a comprehensive presentation that I'm really excited for, going over some of his favorite, if I'm not mistaken, 5 of his best pieces of evidence for young Earth creation.
Oh, how exciting. Now, I'm genuinely curious if Ben's top 5 is going to be the Creation Science Greatest Hits album that we're all expecting. Yeah, you know the tracks, right? Slippery Helium featuring Zircon, Not Enough Salt in the Sea Blues, Dino Bones Just Got Collagen, Distant Light, Instant Journey, the ACS mix, and a bonus track, Radiometric Dating is just a suggestion.
The title of the video, Young Earth Creationists has no clue how science works.
I'm not sure why you're laughing at that, because it's very accurate.
So I guess we're going to see how true that assertion is here today.
Well, bring it on then, God boy. I mean, 3 against 1 is hardly fair, but I'm not worried because I've got something far more powerful on my side than any god or gods. The truth, which is awesome, because all I have to do is look things up. And you 3, well, you've got to squint and stand on one leg and spin around just to produce anything that could even have a chance of being misunderstood as evidence. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. And you have to call every scientist ever a liar.
I'm going to point out this comment. Andrew Cumming. There is no scientific support. What an assertion.
He's not wrong. There is, in fact, 0 scientific support for young Earth creation. It's not a debatable point. It's the scientific consensus. The proofs you offer have been getting dismantled for decades. Just ask Kent Ovin.
Not a doctor. Shh.
What you're saying is like a flat earther trying to assert that gravity isn't real. It's a hilarious claim, but it does not change reality.
Okay, let's stop it there for now. As we can see, gentlemen, Creaky Blinder is quite confident that there is no evidence for young Earth creation.
Well, it would seem that Donnie and his pals think that my confidence is misplaced, but I stand by what I said. There is zero evidence for a young Earth, and your stuff has been debunked for decades. Also, I have no idea why you keep laughing. Is it like a nervous thing? Because you know that in your heart, I'm right and you were wrong, and you can't stand being corrected by somebody with face tattoos and stretched ears. Not everyone who loves science looks like a scientist. Sometimes they look like me.
That whatever evidence we provide or offer has been dismantled for years and years. He says, and he even compares it to, well, first he uses argument from consensus, a fallacy that we can get into.
An argument from consensus is an argument that concludes a statement is true because lots of people believe it to be true. So I can see why you would say that, but like everything else you say, it's completely wrong. I don't believe that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. I know it is. And the reason I know it is because that's what all the evidence shows us. You do know what evidence is, don't you, lads? You know, facts, information, or objects presented to support the truth or accuracy of a claim or statement. Now, the young Earth creationist claim, on the other hand, relies on taking genealogies literally. That's not science, mainly because the Bible isn't a science book. But Ben looks like he's ready to go, so let's hear some of this evidence then, Ben. But I will warn you, the second you mention the Bible, I will be dismissing that claim and moving on to the next one. Although that might make this a very short video. So we'll see where we end up.
And secondly, he even compares it to flat Earth and their denial of gravity.
Well, that's not quite accurate. The reason I compare young Earth creationism to flat Earth is because they're both really stupid things to believe. And why are they stupid? Because neither are supported by any form of evidence.
But remind me, gentlemen, isn't gravity, isn't that something, I mean, we can observe through experimentation? It's testable, it's repeatable. Evolution
is the same. Yeah, we know. You know what else is testable and repeatable though? Microevolution. We can observe it happening in the lab right now with bacteria and fruit flies. We can also observe natural selection happening in real time in populations, just like the finches on the Galapagos Islands. That's observable science as well.
Ben, just let me know when you're ready, brother. I think this is a good segue into your presentation to counter obviously very comprehensively what he's asserted here, Ben. So I'll put your slides up on the screen. I see the top 5 scientific evidences of young Earth creation.
Top 5 scientific evidences of young Earth creation. And is that a real Donald Trump quote? Right, okay. Forget the quote, forget the high fives. What really matters now is whether or not these top 5 arguments can stand up to the most recent, repeatable, and multi-validated data points we have in geology and physics today. I'm gonna say no, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments.
Catastrophic plate tectonics is the best flood model currently available. And if you dig deep enough, most of the major young Earth creationist organizations will admit that. But flood models are notoriously controversial within the young Earth community, but hopefully I can explain to you why this is the preferred model.
I appreciate the ambition, Ben. The problem isn't the model's controversy within the young Earth creationist community. The problem is the controversy within basic physics. There was no global flood. Where the hell did the water come from? And more importantly, where did it go?
But first I need to explain what catastrophic plate tectonics is. So I want you to think of the Earth as a waterbed, like you see before you on the screen. The surface of the Earth, or the crust of the Earth, would be the skin of the waterbed, and the mantle is the water inside. Now the mantle is technically a solid, but because it's so hot, it behaves like a really viscous or really thick fluid.
Calling the mantle a thick fluid is like calling the Andromeda galaxy your next door neighbour. While it's technically true, they're both moving, but we're talking about vastly different time scales. If the Earth's mantle were actually as fluid as the water in a waterbed, CPT wouldn't just be fast, it would be over in about a week, and we wouldn't have any continents left.
And so what Baumgartner realized is that the surface of the Earth is kind of like this, that the low parts are the crust of the ocean, and they're lower today because they're heavier, they're more dense. And so they sink lower in the mantle, and therefore that's where all the water gathers, because that's lower. And the continental crust sits up higher. Okay. So what Baumgartner proposed is that prior to the flood, what happened was the crust of the Earth underneath the oceans broke off from the continental crust and subducted underneath it into the mantle.
Yeah, denser oceanic crust naturally sinks lower than continental crust. No argument there. That's just basic geology. But the catastrophic part of CPT, where the entire ocean floor fractures instantly and subducts at meters per second, well, that's the part that just breaks physics. Yeah, this one's going nowhere, is it? And why, I hear you ask? Because the flood he keeps mentioning is Noah's flood from the Bible.
No, this isn't right.
So not real. You cannot debunk reality with a story from the Bible, Ben. I hope your next argument is a little more based in, like, reality.
Let's continue here. It is probably good that you save the salt accumulation as an honorable mention, because you do make that point here, and then Creaky Blinder tries to refute it.
I think what you meant to say was Creaky Blinder does refute it. And I'll do it again right now. I just need to hear you say the words.
That the rate at which salt accumulates in the oceans because of runoff from the continents, salt dissolves into rivers and runs off into the oceans. And so but when water evaporates from the surface of the ocean, the salt doesn't evaporate. So it leaves the salt in the ocean and the water cycle continues.
But isn't that just based on the assumption that salt goes in but never comes back out? Which is wrong, because in reality, the ocean is in a constant state of dynamic equilibrium. Salt is constantly being removed through various natural processes. For example, it gets incorporated into new rock formations, trapped in sedimentary layers, and even blown out to sea by sea spray. All these mechanisms prevent the never-ending build-up that the creationist argument relies on. So in short, they're only accounting for half the equation, probably because the other half completely destroys their claims.
Now, if memory serves, I think the core claim here is that the oceans should be solid blocks of salt if they were 4.5 billion years old, because salt keeps flowing in. But I'll let Ben explain his version, and then I'll explain why he's wrong again.
Okay, so right off the bat, I would say even if we granted him generous rates of salt removal, the net effect still favors salt accumulation, not removal. Therefore, the evidence still points to a young world or a young Earth.
The young Earth creationist argument is based on a simple static model that assumes the input rate is constant and the removal mechanisms are negligible or irrelevant over long periods, which is completely wrong. If the Earth were only 6,000 years old, the oceans would only have roughly 18.3% of the salt they actually contain in reality. In other words, a 6,000-year-old ocean would be much less salty than it is now.
Ben, what are your thoughts, brother?
Well, he is right about that. There are several mechanisms, and if he had read the creationist literature, he would know what they are.
Ah, silly me. That's why I'm wrong, because I didn't read the creationist literature. But I can explain in simple terms why I didn't read any of the creationist literature, if that's helpful. It's because when I need to look up a scientific fact, I tend to favor actual science papers and scientists. Now, if you're getting your information about science from a religious organization, then you're doing it wrong. But it does explain a lot about why your points are so easily debunked.
But we clearly showed that all he has are rescue devices. He still has to do his homework. And when we even give him everything that he wants, everything that he needs, it's still a problem. It's still something that needs to be resolved. Sam, you're going to say something, brother? I'll go mute this.
Yeah. I just wanted to compliment him on his rhetoric game. That is on point. Right? I'm going to give him that. I think he's got good rhetoric.
Yeah, we'll give him the rhetoric. We'll give him a point for rhetoric. 99% rhetoric, maybe 1% substance.
Oh, thanks.
Another one, if I had time, would be the cold spots they found in the mantle, Earth's mantle near the core. These are measurements that are made where they
So Ben, this is going to be a big one. This is going to be a major one.
Is it? We'll see, won't we? Because if Ben mentions the Bible again, I'll just be moving on to the next point.
And so let's allow him to make his argument. So we'll let him speak for a minute or two, and then we'll throw it over to you to get your overall thoughts on what he's saying. Is he misrepresenting it? Do his rescue devices work? So on and so forth.
Am I misrepresenting what? Reality? Relax, Donnie. I'm not misrepresenting anything, pal.
For a temperature based on the motion of the material down there, and they found these cold spots that are something like, I think, 500 to 1,000 degrees Celsius colder than the surrounding mantle.
The claim goes something like this. These cold spots exist, and if the Earth were billions of years old, everything would have completely equilibrated by now. Therefore, the Earth is young. It's a textbook straw man. The cold spots exist, that part is true, but the reason they exist completely disproves the creationist argument. Imagine a huge cold slab of rock from the Earth's surface being shoved down over millions of years into the superheated molten rock of the mantle. That's exactly what's happening. The sinking plate is still a different temperature from the surrounding mantle, and it takes a very, very long time for it to heat up, which is what we are detecting. The cold spots are not evidence of a young Earth. They are direct evidence of plate tectonics in action. And you cannot have subduction, a process that happens at a snail's pace over millions of years, in a young Earth.
I think that was a pretty solid explanation, but go on then, lads. I could see the three of you concentrating. Tell me why I'm wrong.
But what he did say is he's assuming that the rate of subduction is the same as has been observed today.
Oh, you're a liar.
Or at the very least, you just misrepresented what I said. I said no such thing.
And that's not the model. We're saying that it probably occurred faster in the past, and we presented evidence for that. And part of the evidence is that there are cold slabs down there.
But that's just circular reasoning, Ben, and as I've debunked this in the video you're responding to, I'll just say this. The cold slabs argument is actually much weaker for a young Earth than you seem to think, because the mantle is an incredibly poor heat conductor. The old Earth model, or as I like to call it, reality, uses observed slow subduction rates and still accounts for the existence of cold subducted material.
Because aren't you showing that no, it couldn't have occurred slowly? Because if it actually did, if that's what we're gonna, because he's saying, oh, this is evidence for plate tectonics over millions of years. But if that really were the case, then these cold slabs that we find in multiple locations in the Earth should have actually warmed up or even melted. But the fact that they're cool actually supports what we're saying and what you presented on, Ben, that no, this is plate tectonics, but it's rapid plate tectonics, not the snail-paced movements of the plates through the floodwaters, but the continental sprint, as I've heard some people describe it, meters per second movements. I think we're moving into the final point, the helium and zircon crystals. So we've moved along smoothly. He's said a lot.
I've said a lot. Hang on a second here, pal. I'm not the one who took over 3 hours to respond to one 12-minute video.
This is another challenge I want to issue to theistic evolutionists like Redeem Zoomer. Let's see you respond.
I've responded, and I genuinely hope that you find the information I've shared to be helpful.
So here's the paper I'd highly recommend reading. We can see if Redeem Zoomer can refute it. Helium diffusion rates support accelerated nuclear decay. So we know the rates of helium diffusion, and these zircon crystals are supposedly billions of years old, and uranium to lead gives off helium. Helium is produced. It can move through rocks. Since rocks are porous, the gas escapes through the rocks, and helium being a slippery molecule, we shouldn't find the kind of helium that we have in these zircon crystals, because billions of years you'd have plenty of time for the helium to basically leak out and escape into the atmosphere.
Now, the core issue with the argument about helium and zircon crystals is that it's based on yet another flawed assumption. The claim is that because helium is a tiny slippery atom, it should have diffused out of the crystals over millions of years. The claim is that because helium is a tiny slippery atom, it should have diffused out of the crystals over millions of years, and the fact that it hasn't means that the Earth is young. But here's the problem in a nutshell. The argument relies on a simplified model of helium diffusion that ignores key factors like the rock's temperature history and the effects of radiation damage on the crystal structure. And to make that argument work, creationists must invoke the idea of accelerated nuclear decay. That radioactive decay rates were much faster in the past, and this is just another ad hoc explanation that violates established physics. It's another glorious example of a self-refuting premise.
Okay, let me make a couple points first, and then we'll get your thoughts, Ben. I put together some slides here. I've heard, okay, firstly, Dr. Russell Humphreys has very comprehensively addressed all of these objections, and I'm going to show people, I'm going to direct them to an article on creation.com.
Remember earlier when I said I would dismiss any claim they put forward from the Bible? Well, the same applies to creationist websites, because whoever wrote that paper already believes the same things you do, or their paper would have been published in an actual scientific journal, not on a creationist website. And the explanation I gave in my original video still stands. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Love you. Bye.
Out of everything that's on the internet, this is the best thing.
So, I went to a party last week. The DJ played the twist, so I did the twist. The DJ played jump, so I jumped. Then the DJ played Come On Eileen, and I got arrested.
I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna